Ra- Radalina, I
Yes.
was wondering why you call your group the Sixth Seed.
Oh, that's my website actually. Uh, it's a
Oh,
bit, it's a bit connected to, Rudyr,
uh-huh.
but not directly. I
Okay.
have a lot of planets in my chart in the sixth house. It's a big helium in the sixth house. So
Okay.
that's where this is picked up from. And the seed is, as you know, I see each one of us as a seed. And I thought, okay, maybe I'm the sixth seed. So no, it is a totally made up name. It's not meant to be completely symbolic. But
Okay.
yeah, I just thought, okay, well, I like the idea of, you know, the little acorn getting into the big oak, and how we follow the prescription of the chart, and you know, live out our own energies in a way. So I thought,
Yes.
okay, I've got such a big concentration on the sixth house in my chart that I just thought this may be a good idea as a name.
What do you have in the sixth house?
What I have in the sixth house, is that what you're asking?
Yes.
So my sun, so sun conjunct Mercury conjunct Pluto, all in Scorpio in the sixth, and then I've got Venus there as well. And what else I've got? Mars in Libra in the sixth, and South Node in the sixth in Libra. So almost everything, pretty much.
Wow.
Yeah, quite a lot.
Are you a very organized person?
I wish I was much more organized than I actually am. Yeah, it's an illustration how we shouldn't take it literally, you know, seeing.
Yeah, right.
In some respects I am. I've got a lot of Virgo traits in me, I think, even though I have no planets in the sign Virgo. But yes, I think it's more to do with this fixation of the sixth house in what you're interested in. This side of it, not that much the orderliness. But I don't see myself as particularly practical. The earth is not my strength. But
You say that, but I noticed that all your books are organized height-wise, and I can see that your posters, they all line up at the top. So
yes. I can help with a bit more chaos in my life. You're right. Very well
okay.
done. Yes. Next time I'm going to reshuffle the books a bit. More interesting. I have to learn about the 12th house. You know, my North Node in the 12th house is a bit disregarded. Yeah.
Okay.
But I think this fixation on symmetry and, you know, of orderliness, to me, this has always been connected more to Libra than to Virgo. I don't know if you would agree with me.
Yeah,
In my chart,
balance.
Libra is very strong. There's a South Node, so I guess it's coming from there a bit. I now want to give it to Dwayne. Dwayne is, I think, a lot more familiar with Chiron than I am. So last time I asked him if he would mind starting the conversation today instead of me.
Okay, well, thank you for the opportunity to dive into Chiron, which is what I've done over this last very interesting week. I have I used Apple's Keynote software to put together a little presentation. I have a fear that it's way more than we might want to get into here, but it's an exploration, right? So if I launch into it, if we're able to share my screen, and then
I think we won't be able to do that because my settings don't allow it, but I can open it from my side because I have it. And we can do it. I mean, from my side, you can tell me which page, for example, you want me to go to, if that's.
oh, okay. This is a brand new presentation.
Oh, that's something else. Okay.
On Chiron. So it says share screen here, but I can't share my screen.
You can try.
Shall we try?
But I believe because I had another conversation on Zoom earlier today, and the other person tried to share the screen, but for some reason my settings didn't allow it. You can try.
Okay.
And I will take a look if I can change that so you can do it.
Okay. It says host disabled attendee screen sharing.
Right.
So
do you have an idea how I can change that and let you share with us? Let me see. Maybe I can figure it out. Okay, I think I may be able to
I think there
Could you
must
try
be a way
now?
to make him a presenter, Radalina.
Oh yes, I can make him a presenter. Yes, exactly. It's such a good idea. Now you are the host, Dwayne, so you can, I think you can do it now.
Okay, I'll try.
Yes?
There we go.
It's working with me. I can see it.
It's working. The end. Well, that was quick.
We're starting from the end.
Let's see now. We need to go. There. Is everybody getting that? Exploring Chiron?
Yes, I am at least.
Yes.
Can anybody hear me?
Yeah, we see that.
I
Yes.
can hear
Okay.
you. We can hear you.
And are you seeing the image?
Yes?
Yes.
Very well.
Yes, I'm seeing the image.
Okay. Great. Okay. All right. So my sense of astrology is that there are as many astrologies as there are astrologers. And I think this matters because we use the common language, but we're all coming from a slightly different place. And it can be vastly different at any given time, depending on the group that's assembled. So just wanted to bring that forward. My approach to astrology began in the early 70s. And it was right at the time that the consciousness movement was really John C. Lilly, the MD, was communicating with dolphins and doing legal LSD research at the time. And shortly after a long stint that he had with his attempt to communicate with dolphins, he came up with this human biocomputer theory. And I was really impacted by his work at that time. And I took to heart his, what I call the Consciousness Explorer's Credo, because all of the beliefs about astrology that I've taken on since that time, they've all been referenced back to this notion that in the province of the mind, what one believes to be true is true, to be found experientially and experimentally. These limits are further beliefs to be transcended. In the province of the mind, there are no limits. So this was the kind of explorer's orientation that I had when I first encountered Rudyard. So I'm definitely, I guess, a Rudyarian. I've been with him since 1972, and it's been quite the journey. Now, of course, I've encountered other, sorry.
No.
So that book, The Lunation Cycle, that you see there, and that I can remember to the very moment when I picked that book off the bookshelf in the Laughing Rooster bookstore. My whole body vibrated, and I felt like it was going to change my life in some significant way. And it certainly did. It put me into the stream of consciousness that Rudyard represents, and took me into the whole cyclic, holistic worldview. And it was a very personal grounding for me because in that book, Rudyard introduces the notion of the lunation birthday. And as I took on my understanding of what it was to be born as a waxing crescent, it became more and more meaningful to me. And I really wanted to integrate what I was learning from him and just from my own contemplations and reading other authors. I really felt I needed an integrative tool. And what I came up with at the time was a lunation journal.
Mm-hmm.
And since then I've developed this journaling practice that goes, it's pretty much a continuous thread that goes right back to 1972, where all my journals are organized according to lunation cycle. So very consciously, I've been moving through my life, journaling according to this basic structure, the basic structure of the lunation cycle. Now, there's good reason for that, as Rudyard points out and I'm going to bring this around to Rudyard being an exemplar of Chiron. And quotes along the way, I think will help bring forth what he's all about there. This one is from Beyond Individualism, one of his later books. Knowledge born of accumulated observations and experiments, which is what your lunation journal becomes, are classified. Oops. I'm sorry, I can't read that.
No, you go on. I'm just showing the book that you just mentioned.
Oh, good. I just have to move the screen out of the way so I can read that. Well, okay.
Would you like me to? I can see it pretty big on my
Oh, you can see the whole quote?
Is it the one, knowledge born of accumulated observations?
Yes.
Right. So knowledge born of accumulated observations and experiments, and of the classification and generalization of these data, leads to the growth of a mental attitude which is not only objective, but at least potentially transformative. Wisdom, likewise, can act as a transformative force. For events, whether present, expected, or past, can be transformed by the meaning given to them. Such transformations raise the consciousness to a higher vibratory pitch. The circulatory and repetitiveness of biological instincts becomes, as a result, the spiral of conscious human evolution. Right?
Thank you. Yes. So I want to emphasize that last notion of the spiral of conscious human evolution, because the Chiron is related to the spiral. And this lunation journal that I've been working with and just tracking the lunation cycle is a spiralic journey. As I understand it, it's a journey into the fractal nature of existence in a conscious way. And Rudyard's book, The Lunation Cycle, really pioneers that, not only through the lunation birthday, but also the progressed lunation technique. They're both based on the structure of the lunation cycle. And especially the progressed lunation technique, it acts as an integrating core that you can bring all of the other aspects of astrological consultation or into it. So I highly recommend, if you haven't explored the progressed lunation technique, it's very worthwhile. In 1975, we'll see on the right-hand side here, the book Phases of the Moon came out. Now that's by three authors, three cycle work on a schema by W.B. Yeats in his book called A Vision. And so that was a major contribution to the whole lunation cycle approach to existence that came out in 75. So another very good resource book. So Chiron was discovered in 1977. Astronomers consider it to be a minor planet because it is physically small compared to the other planets. Now, we consider the psychological aspect of Chiron much more important. So it doesn't get relegated to a lesser status. It has its rightful place. It's out there between Saturn and Uranus. It's shuttling between the two. And at parts of its cycle, it goes in its 50-year cycle. It's within the realm of Saturn's orbit. So this is its, as Barbara Clow said, the orbit of Chiron is highly elliptical, making this the planet that rules spiral forms of evolution, while the other planets teach us in a circular fashion. I think she's talking more about the personal and social collective planets because, as we know, Pluto has an elliptical orbit as well. But that brings in that notion of the spiralic journey that Chiron facilitates for us. So my introduction to Chiron came through Barbara Clow in 1987. She had worked then for 10 years in her own astrological practice. She had worked with Chiron as a brand new astrological indicator. And I think she's done an amazing amount of work in bringing Chiron into the astrological domain. That first book in 87, and then in 91, Astrology and the Rising of Kundalini. And she's really making it apparent that Chiron can be a very useful tool in helping people navigate, especially through their Uranus opposition when, as she puts it, the Uranian Kundalini energy is at its peak. And a lot of people have major trouble navigating that time of life. Well, she's provided some excellent guidelines based on Chiron. Barbara herself, we see Aquarius Sun with the North Node conjunct Chiron in the 12th house. So that's pretty clear signature of a chirotic exemplar, which she certainly is.
Do you know what's the sign of her Chiron by any chance? I just got curious about that.
I don't know offhand.
Oh, no problem.
I'd have to go digging for that. So she's, that quote that just came through is about Chiron's, the lesson of Chiron is about breaking Saturnian form and moving into the outer planet realm. I think of it as a safe way to enter that realm. If we don't, without Chiron as an intermediary, without Chiron as an attitude of choosing transformation, if we don't have that, we're up against changing through catastrophe. The Uranian lightning bolts that we have absolutely no control over. If we have Chiron, and if we have the divination tools, which from this point of view, I really think that the astrology itself is a divinatory art. And if we bring that to bear in our own path, we can choose to transform. And so much of what Rudyard has laid out for us makes that possible. So we're choosing to transform, choosing to expand consciousness rather than waiting for catastrophe to change us. Again, I can't seem to see that.
So it says Chiron was, this is
oh, I'm sorry.
by Barbara Clow, but I think you moved on to the next slide now.
Yeah, whoa. I'm sorry.
Just go in the other direction.
There we go.
That's it. Shall I read it, or do you see it fine? You can. It's Chiron was considered. Oh, it's gone again.
Oh, I'm sorry. Here we go.
All right.
Okay.
Chiron was considered one of the greatest astrologers in ancient mythology, and this planetary sighting heralds the return of astrology as a great science, says Barbara Clow. This is a quote. I didn't know that Chiron was one of the greatest astrologers.
He's our man.
He's our man.
I really think that when you take these keywords into consideration, and you think about Dane Rudyard you can't help but think that he is a chirotic exemplar.
Mm-hmm.
Chiron is associated with the wound that will not heal. Well, I don't know if having only one kidney constitutes the wound that won't heal, but that's who Rudyard was. He had his kidney removed, I think, when he was in his teen years, which fortunately kept him from going into the army, and his the platoon that he would have been in was wiped out completely in the First World War. So it's kind of like the other side of that's the gift that came to him. Where the light entered him, it seems, was in the 9th house.
That's great.
You know, and for years I never made a connection between Rudyard and Chiron. I always was curious because Chiron came into view in 1977, and he was still writing prolifically, but I don't know if maybe other people have a reference to anything he's said about Chiron, but I haven't come across anything. And yet here, as I discovered only a couple of years ago, Chiron is very prominent, the most prominent planet in his chart here. So I really do think, in retrospect, you know, I'm totally seeing him as a contemporary manifestation of that Chiron archetype in its fullness. You know, the centaur. And he left us so much. And where I first keyed into it was this particular image where you see Chiron up there near the MC, and that incredible energy of Rudyard's. There's another quote, if you wouldn't mind, Radlina.
Yes, the highest purpose of astrology is to provide the individual human being with a knowledge of how best to act, so that the closed center of the ego may open up to the power of his or her inherent destiny or dharma. So that's a quote from Rudyard's Humanistic to Transpersonal Astrology.
So Rudyard is really calling us to this highest purpose of astrology. And he's placing, you know, he devoted over 50 years of his life to reformulating astrology for the modern era. And he, you know, I was with him, like I say, from 1972, and I always thought I would catch up. You know, I started reading him, you know, continuously. I always thought I'd catch up, but I never did. As soon as I had finished one book, there was another one, and then another one, and it was really quite remarkable. And he's just the most prolific writer I'd ever encountered. And as far as I'm concerned, these are all chirotic. You know, they're this whole realm of Chiron is what he was making apparent to us.
Never thought of this way. That's so interesting.
Now, these 3 books, especially, lay out a multi-leveled approach to astrological understanding. And the tools that he, you know, what I experienced was that I was just getting a handle on his humanistic approach to astrology, person-centered, and then all of a sudden we get, you know, astrology of, well, the sun is also a star, and beyond individualism. Now he's taking me into a much deeper realm and indicating that, yeah, there's an ascending journey here that goes through discrete levels, and there are requirements at each level of consciousness. And again, he took it upon himself to provide us with tools to navigate that journey. And these 3 books in particular are helpful in that regard. You know, he, along with his astrology, of course, he goes into the philosophical framework that kind of surrounds and supports all of this. and one can get, get lost in that vast Rudgerian complex, but definitely worthwhile. This is one thing that is central to Rudyard's approach, this humanistic, person-centered approach. So this is what really appealed to me. I haven't ever developed an astrological practice in terms of meeting the public in that way. It's always been, I've always used astrology as a personal tool of cultivating my own individual selfhood. And fundamental to that has been the notion of the birth chart as a mandala, and the notion that everything that is contained within the circumference of the birth chart should sooner or later be referred to the center. So just as in 72, I was so concerned with getting thread of the lunation cycle. Are we getting?
I'm sorry. I'm trying to. Karen, I think there is something with Mike. That's. No, you are the host, Dwayne. So I'm not able to control the mics about this. And I'm not able to. Karen, do you mind muting your mic just for a second? Because I think we're getting some background noise there. Perfect. Yeah, you did it, but then you undid it.
Oh.
No, it's great. Thank you, Karen. Thank you. Yeah, you can go on, Dwayne.
Okay, great. Thanks. So this mandalic approach means that you're constantly referring back to your inner core, all of your experiences, so that it's really a way of consolidating those insights that are important to you and in your individuality. And that's why, again, the notion of the journaling has been for me a really powerful tool in that regard.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, Dwayne, but I think we're still having a bit of trouble with Karen's mic. Karen, I don't know why. Maybe something is touching your mic while you're there, and I have no way to control it from my side at the moment.
Can Dwayne control the and mute us?
Yeah, I think she managed now to. I think she managed now to switch it off. At least on my screen, it's showing fine for now. No, it's back on. I don't know. Dwayne, maybe you can, if you see Karen on your screen, you can mute her mic from your side. I think she's having trouble with it.
Who is that I'm looking for?
So you see Karen.
Oh.
No, yeah, now it's muted, but I don't know if you did it.
It's not my.
You can mute us all at the same time.
No, my cursor goes.
It's. I think it's fine now. Yeah, it's fine now. You can go on.
Okay.
Sorry for the.
Okay. Well, if you would read this quote, I'd appreciate.
Yeah. So the next quote from Barbara Clow again. It's the horoscope is the ultimate divination tool because it uses past, present, and future simultaneously to see how consciousness is functioning. Right?
Right. So the ultimate divination tool. I really think that's true.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when it comes to particular Chironic techniques, Barbara Clow, whoops, we're still.
I will write her a message. You can go on, Ray. No worries.
The Chiron activation technique is one that Barbara Clow introduces in her book, the Kundalini astrology book. If you would just read the quote part of that, that'd be great.
Yes.
Yeah.
Do you want me to just read the second part or the whole text? Is it?
Okay, let's go with the whole works. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not a lot. So yeah, the planets in the birth chart symbolize basic psychological functions, and according to the Chiron activation technique, the transit of Chiron through one's birth chart provides valuable timing information regarding sequential activation of those functions. According to Barbara Claw, this is fundamentally an alchemical process. When Chiron transits any natal planet, she says, the energy of that planet is alchemized. The earth plane, form, and meaning of the planet is explored and deepened. And as soon as the form and structure of that energy is fully grasped, Uranus will come in and begin to manifest that form in higher octaves. In any given lifetime, by age 50, Chiron has transited every planet in the natal chart. It has alchemized all the personality dynamics, and it has opened the doors to the outer planets in consciousness. Okay?
Thank you. So again, this notion of being proactive in choosing to transform, and this particular technique can be helpful in that, especially if you take up a contemplative approach to your own life, which this really helps with.
Do you think we could figure out this extra sound? I'm sorry, but it's
Yes.
really bothering and it interferes with me being able to hear
Yeah.
Dwayne.
Yeah, you're right, Lauren. I'm just trying my way. I just sent a Karen a message, but she may be away from her computer. Maybe she left it like this or something.
No, I'm here. It's just every time I go back to Dwayne's screen, it seems to unmute me. I can't figure out why, but I'll just leave it on the other, and it seems to be muted there. So I'll go back.
Okay, well, maybe if you try now to press the button for the muting, and we can give you a sign if it's working. Sounds a lot more, I don't know. Maybe something is touching your mic. I'm not sure, or wind around you.
That's what it sounds like. That's the sound when I have an extra speaker in and I touch it, then that will mess that up. But it's really
Well, I found
interfering
it
with
now.
being able to hear.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I found it now. Here we go.
Oh, I think you probably managed to just fix it. Did you? Yeah, I think we can't hear that now. Yes? How is it with you?
I no longer hear it. So thank you so for taking the moment. It really bothered me.
Oh yeah, you're absolutely right, because later on in the recording it's also going to show definitely. So yes, we had to fix that. Okay, I think we can go on, Dwayne. We're ready to go again.
Okay, well, thank you. And if you'd be so kind, there's some more reading here.
Of course. Starting from the top, we've got the Chiron activation technique with the 8th of the Chiron ephemeris, and you're giving the link. Determination of the Chiron activation sequence begins by locating Chiron's natal position in a given birth chart, then moving counterclockwise from that location. Determination is made of the complete 50-year series of conjunctions made by transiting Chiron to the planetary bodies in the chart. This establishes the activation sequence unique to the birth chart. And you're giving us a handy table that we can, I assume we can do that with every chart if we want to do the calculations. And then you say at the bottom, focused awareness of the Chiron activation techniques sustained over a number of years is what gives this technique its power to transform consciousness.
Thank you. So as an example, I've, of course, applied this to my own life, and just give you a sense of what the experience is like. We've got, oh, it's not advancing for some reason. Oh, there we go. So in the purple panel are all the activations that I've gone through in my life from birth to my Chiron return at age 50. And as an example, and I can read this, I can see it. The 50-year Chiron activation sequence shown above is based on my own chart. It reveals that the first planet activated by transiting Chiron after my birth was Jupiter at age 4. And so there's little Dwayne at age 4. He looks like a pretty happy fellow to me, enjoying a kind of a mini abundance moment there. At age 24 was when transiting Chiron activated my natal moon, which was so that was May of 73, shortly after my first contact with Rudyard and his teachings regarding the lunation cycle.
Mm-hmm.
Transiting Chiron conjoined my natal Uranus in August of 87, coming exact just days prior to the unprecedented worldwide ceremonial event known as harmonic convergence, for which I was the Calgary area facilitator. I was 38 years of age at the time. So there I am navigating through my Uranus opposition with Chiron being a big part of that. Now the Chiron return, of course, like every other planet, completes its orbit. At around age 50, Chiron returns to the same zodiacal position it held at her birth. This signifies that a threshold of initiation into the elder portion of our life has arrived. According to Barbara Clow, it is a threshold at which a significant choice must be made. And as she says, which will it be? The Promethean dilemma, being chained eternally to a mountain with monster birds eating your liver. And this comes out of the traditional mythology associated with Chiron. Or entering the Chironium, assiduously transmuting all inner anger and pain by going into the ancient healing temple founded by Chiron. So according to this understanding, Chiron, the mythological Chiron that we refer back to, presumably there was a manifestation of that in a person, and that person built temples for healing. And that's why Chiron is so highly regarded in that regard. So I had the great good fortune of living on Cortes Island and establishing my own Chironium. It was a point in my life. I'm at my Chiron return, and I constructed this little healing temple in Green Valley on Cortes Island, very magical spot. And it truly was one of the high points of my life to have this little temple and to be able to go there and work through introspection and retrospection. Really checked in with my whole life journey and learn to forgive and forget. And in my relationship at the time, my primary relationship was very much a crucible of transformation. And this little temple played a big part in that journey. The roundhouse, as I called it, was secluded, small, and overlooked Green Valley. It was totally suited to the kind of contemplation Barbara Clow calls for at one's Chiron return. And her call is this: Chiron return is the passage into contemplation. All that is asked of you now is total honesty. The Latin root for contemplation, con temple, means within the temple. After 50, earth can be your temple. You can return to the garden, but it is tricky to regain lost innocence. So many of you are probably closing in on a Chiron return. I encourage you to really take advantage of that time. It's and to bear down in your contemplations of your own life. Earth can be your temple. So back to Rudyard. The ultimate aim of human evolution is the raising of the focus of consciousness, and as a result, or at the same time, the freeing of human activity from its bondage to physicality and biology by providing for it new channels of expression. And from my understanding, that's exactly what Rudyard pioneered, were new channels of expression. And he left us with quite a legacy. This quote is from his book, Culture, Crisis, and Creativity. However universal and seemingly timeless spirit is understood essentially to be the acts of this spirit, and as a result, the revelations dispensed to human beings deal always with particular persons and particular situations. The outcome of these acts and revelations depends upon the answers which a particular individual implicitly, if not explicitly, gives to the fundamental question, where do you stand here and now? So in closing, I refer to where my own path has taken me. And it has taken me onto a linkage between the lunation cycle work and the orbit of Uranus, the 84-year orbit of Uranus. And I've recently, after a couple of years writing, have brought forth this document, which is online, and I'll make available to you for free through a link. It kind of wraps up and gives an overview of what my journey has been. So if you're interested in seeing the way a person who engaged with the lunation cycle early on in his life and has sustained it, that connection into his 71st year, that's what that document is about. And that's what I'll close with. And open for questions.
I wanted to say, yes, I'm so interested in reading this because for me, in my ability to understand, I like the personal approach to see how did it reflect in the life. So I'm so grateful. Thank you. I'd love to receive and read your this Tales and Tools.
Great. That would be my pleasure. Whoops. Now, I didn't mean to go into that right now. But it's there. Rudyard here emphasizes how important it is if you do encounter a Uranian transformation, a sudden transformative experience that you have no control over. As he emphasizes, it is what happens then, after the Saturnian fortress is shattered. That's when it matters what you do, how you interpret or realize the meaning of that transcendent experience. And in what I've written in Tales and Tools is what my response was to an experience that actually came 2 years prior to discovering Rudyard. So that was in 1970, when I had an inner light experience that totally turned my life around. When I saw that I had a choice, that there was a way that I had within me the capacity to turn from complete resignation and despair to a journey into the light. And that's what that turnaround moment was about. And it was because of that moment that I was sensitized to teachers like Rudyard and like Jose Arguelles, who was a Rudyard associate at that time, and to Buckminster Fuller and to John Lilly and so many others who were into the consciousness movement. And all of that got wrapped up again back to my chironic practice, my lunation journaling practice. And so what I'm able to do now is go back in and mine that resource, constantly turning those years of journal keeping into a very rich resource. I'm gonna click out of here if I can. Oh, there we go. A final image. Now I don't know what's going on here. I lost my cursor, so I'm not sure how to stop my screen. Anybody have ideas on that? No?
Isn't it? Can you hear me
I
now?
wanted to ask a question. You asked, and it was about why Chiron is the horse, the centaur. What does the horse image have to do with Chiron?
Dwayne, would you like to answer that? Yeah.
Well, that whole notion of our biological selves, you know, the lower physical nature that has to be overcome. You know, those circular patterns that we get caught into, biologically governed, so many of them, are what the chirotic force is channeled into. That's what it's working with. It's working with those places that we're going round and round and getting stuck in.
What does that have to do with the horse? Or the
horse being the metaphor for that realm of our lower biological instinct. And once that is harnessed,
the horse is representative of why wouldn't it be a cow or a donkey or, you know, any of the other images? Why a horse?
I guess you'd have to go back to, the evolution of particular metaphors.
I think. Is it what you're asking, Lauren? Where is the image of the centaur coming from? You know, Chiron in mythology is a centaur. The actual figure of Chiron is a centaur, which is half horse and half human. And
so Chiron was a centaur?
Yes, Chiron was a centaur. He was one of the centaurs, the most evolved, we can say. They were all savage creatures in myth, all children of Saturn. And I don't remember what was in the mother, but it was like the Saturn part is the physical part, the earthly part. So the horse part is the Saturn part, as far as I understand. And then we've got the human spiritual part, which is the top of it, the human part of it. And this is a lot of what Dwayne was referring to, I believe, if we try to translate it in slightly simpler terms, this constant duality between human nature, basic nature, and spirit, and how we can combine nature and spirit. I think Barbara Henkel was talking so much about in her book, the one that Dwayne showed us, the Kundalini book. So this book is focusing on Chiron, Saturn, and Uranus. And she's explaining in that book about this, lots of different levels of duality that Chiron refers to: feminine, masculine, lower nature, higher nature, human against animal, and all sorts of things, which are this transition, this bridge between the realm of the so-called physical planets up to Saturn, where all our physical energies have their boundary to, and the other planets, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. So the mere fact that it's in between is also symbolical of this transition between the two. She's also saying how she had been observing for, since I don't remember when, but for more than 25 years, she says, what's the effect of Chiron on the common psyche? What are we introducing into the realm of astrology and psychology with Chiron, with the discovery of Chiron of 1977? And she noticed that a lot of healing arts started getting not just more prominent and more used after these years, especially during the 80s and the 90s afterwards. But we started making the connection, and especially in the healing professions, between body and spirit. And these two were used to be treated separately and to be totally designated before the discovery of Chiron. So it is so much to do with that, I believe. I'm sorry, I went too long with this.
No, I didn't, believe me, I didn't even realize that Chiron was a centaur. I didn't know that. So I didn't understand why. I've always just seen Chiron as the symbol of the circle with kind of a key on top.
Yes.
I want to add one little thing, is that the biological part, when you pointed out of the biological clock, when Uranus, when I was 42 years old in the biological clock, and then that would mean it was opposite, then I had a sudden, my father was killed and he died in 16 hours, and he was my closest person on the planet. And I also, within that 6-month period of time, I discovered my husband had removed all my money from my parents and everything. And so there was a divorce of my husband. And in a 6-month period, I lost my father, my husband, and all my money. So talk about a Chiron, Uranus at 42. So there's the biological age, and there are the events that changed my life forever.
Lauren, would you mind if we share your chart?
Please, yeah, you can. Yes.
I'm going to try to do that now. And here I've got them. Let me see where you are. Okay. I hope you can all see that. Could you?
I can.
Okay, perfect. So yeah, this is Lauren's chart. I haven't had a chance to go through it very much, but I hope you, Lauren, can illustrate for us how this played out in terms of the signs in the chart and the symbols in the chart. Okay, what we've got here is Chiron in the 12th. But you were talking about your Uranus return, isn't it? So the events that you shared.
The one I had mentioned happened at, I'm now 67, and what happened at 42 in 1995 changed my life forever.
It was the Uranus opposition.
The Uranus
opposition.
Mm-hmm.
That was what I was speaking of. But yeah, you can see that that the Chiron is in my, wouldn't you say it's in the 11th house, not the 12th house?
Okay, let me say here, because I know this is a bit confusing for those of you who are just new to me and new to these meetings. I use a Campanus house system, and that's why it gives a bit of difference.
Okay.
But yeah, we can refer to what you used to have as your chart, if that's what you.
No, it doesn't really matter to me. I'm just saying I was confused by that because
Yes, that's why there is a bit of a difference from how you may have been used to seeing your charts and the way I have them, because I
yeah.
use companies. But regardless of the house, I believe we can see that during your Uranus opposition, Uranus was on top of your Chiron, basically.
Aha.
Did you realize that? You know, we all have it. I think everybody here, even though we are from different generations, we have this ongoing Chiron opposite Uranus aspect in our charts, all of us, because that was present throughout pretty much the whole of the 20th century. If you know the dates when, I think it's soon to be, or it's no longer there for younger people, but I don't know exactly at the moment. I can't say exactly when it started. But I know that every chart today that we've got has this aspect.
Aha.
Uranus opposite Chiron. So we all have it. It's just playing out in different houses in our charts. Yeah.
Ah.
Touching different planets eventually. So yeah. But then interestingly, when you had your Uranus opposition, this was on top of Chiron.
Okay.
Pretty much. Not exactly, but pretty much.
It devastated me, all those 3 events, and I had a 4-year-old and a 6-year-old, 2 daughters. So it was, and I didn't. It was very. It has changed my life forever. That year.
I don't know if you have explored that, but this to me makes so much sense regarding the aspects that this opposition, Chiron-Uranus, is making to your Saturn-Neptune conjunction in the 8th house. If we take a look at that Saturn-Neptune, we may trace these events to, I mean, I'm not trying to say that it caused it, but this was the T-square activated during that time. And we associate events like the ones that you shared with the 8th house, sudden changes, including mortality, including separations, all sorts of dramatic events in relationships. And what can be more difficult than Saturn conjunct Neptune in the 8th house being triggered by that? So you had quite a lot to deal with because of that T-square. I would suggest you explore the T-square maybe a bit more. What do you guys think about that? Anyone else wants to comment?
I've got a comment.
Yes,
Yes.
You break up a little bit, but now you're back. Yes.
Okay.
Can you hear me at all? Can anybody hear me?
Yes,
I can hear Raven. Is that Raven?
Yeah. I guess my mic was off the whole time. When you get through, I'd like to say something the next time we have a moment. Yeah, go ahead.
Sure, go ahead. Now is the moment.
I just want to go back to Dwayne's presentation for a minute.
Yes.
And say that I really liked that. It was very, very interesting, the whole thing, even though it was kind of hard to get parts of it so fast and with our technical stuff, but I really liked it. And I wanted to, on a personal note, say that I was a really good friend of Jose Arguelles's, and that I met Rudyard at Jose's house and was part of an astrology group at that time, way back when he lived in Davis. So it's interesting that you knew him too, and with the harmonic convergence and all the things we followed with him. And then the third thing I wanted to say is I'm an absolute dummy about technology, which is being really hard for me right now. So I was really impressed by the look at the presentation as well. And I wondered how you did that. Did you use a software to put that all together? Or is it just something you know how to do?
No, thanks to a Mac and what's called Keynote on the Mac. It's a very robust, PowerPoint kind of program. That's I've fallen in love with it. It's just an awesome tool. And
well, I have Mac, so maybe I'll look for it.
Yeah, it's great. You can play around with it easily, and it's drag and drop, and lots of color changes possible, and text, and it's just an amazing tool.
Oh, that sounds great. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
And there is so much similar work in the document that Dwayne so kindly wants to share with us. I personally would like to buy that document, Dwayne. I don't want to. I mean, it's a lot of work. We're talking about not a presentation. We're talking about a book, the one that Dwayne wants to share with us. So I think you're really going to appreciate it when you see it. And it's got amazing images. I was going to ask, where did you find the original images, Dwayne? Not how you put them in the presentation, but more, do you use your own photos, and where are these coming from? As they're fascinating to me.
There's multiple sources. I do go out on the internet and grab images, and I try to keep track of the source and acknowledge that. I'm not always successful. Mm-hmm. But I'm an avid photographer, and I'm skilled in Photoshop and so on. So I do a lot of my own graphics using those resources.
That's very impressive.
Yeah.
Can you be hired?
Good question.
I can be persuaded.
Okay, I think we should talk at some point.
Right on.
Okay.
By the way, do I remember?
I would really like to. Could we rewind just a bit back to Lauren's comments?
Yes, of course.
Because as she was speaking, I realized what a resonance I had in my own life with what she experienced at her Uranus opposition. So as your father died at your Uranus opposition, Lauren, my father died at the same time in my life. And I just flipped open Barbara's book, and here's a quote. Most individuals born 1949 through 1951 have Chiron squaring Saturn in Virgo, ruled by Chiron. Therefore, the father blocks the ability to bring in the higher self, and Saturn will hold their energy until Uranus opposite Uranus. So this is a very archetypal experience that you and I obviously have shared.
Interesting. And mine was my father was killed, so it happened. It was so fast. It was so shocking. He was in perfect health. He was 77, which doesn't seem too old anymore. And so that was part of that shock. Every part of that seemed that when you think of Uranus, you think of shock, right? Or sudden surprise.
Absolutely. Oh, yeah. Yeah, you got it.
So those three events were I thought I was so happily married. Everything was, I heard a voice inside myself that said, open up a letter. And that's how I discovered all the funds of my life my inheritance had been taken from me by trickery.
Wow. Can I add the father thing in there?
Yes.
My father committed suicide on the Saturn thing too, but it was the 28-year-old point. Uh-huh. When Saturn hits you around, I was almost 28, just a few months away, and when my father committed suicide.
Wow. Raven, may I add something here regarding what you're saying? Am I mistaken that both you and Dwayne are born in 1940?
That's right. Yeah.
Dwayne, were you born in 1941 or 40? Around 40?
49.
Sorry?
49.
49. Okay, sorry, I'm getting confused then with the dates. So then it's just relevant to Raven what I'm trying to say here. I read in Barbara Hind-Kloh today that people born between certain years, especially in the beginning of the 40s, she says, they have, correct me if I'm wrong, they have, when they had their first Saturn return, they also had their first Chiron square. And she says that the first Chiron square is the most eventful of all the aspects that Chiron makes during the cycle of Chiron, right? So we can check that out, but I think she said beginning of the 40s. So
Yes.
You're even saying that this event happened when you were during your Saturn return, your first Saturn return. So
yes,
this coincided with the first square of Chiron.
That's interesting because I didn't know about Chiron. I've never really checked that out.
Maybe if Dwayne wants to run us through the cycle of Chiron and how erratic it is and how in certain years, I think you both belong to the generation where you had your first square of Chiron very young. Is that right? With some people it happens in a very young age, while with others it happens during their 20s.
Because of the ellipse
Yes.
of the orbit.
Yes.
Oh yeah, interesting. Yeah, interesting.
Shall we look at Raven's chart quickly if we want to see that together and see how it could have played out? Let me see.
Yeah, my Chiron's conjunct Pluto in the 7th house.
Can I ask one question about my chart? Are we leaving it?
No, you can. It's still here. Yes.
Okay, I just wanted to ask about. I've always thought that what was so very important was that it was part of this yod that pointed to Pluto. There's 3 yods of God in it.
Yeah.
And I thought that had a certain destiny with it to have those yods. Is that's how I was. I mean, you can see it. It is a very prominent planet when you do my chart.
Yeah, certainly.
So that the Pluto energy is it when it's in a yod like that and goes towards it? Can anyone tell me about that? I mean, it's got that sextile to Mercury in my first house, in my Mercury in Pisces, and then the yod extends to the Pluto.
Right. Does anyone want to comment on this before I do? No? Okay. The first thing that comes to my mind, it's these 2 yods are so powerful. The Pluto one, the one with the top of it being Pluto, may have to do with the story around your husband. It's conjunct the DC, the descendant. So maybe a lot of it can be traced. This retrograde Mercury in the first house is one side of the yod. And you said that the crux of the matter was to do with, misinformation, if I can use a very mild word,
Yes.
Information being hidden from you, lies and deceptions. Of course, the yod the other yod was activated when you were going through the crisis at the same time, coming out from the 8th house, which is, referring back to Pluto, so Pluto, the 8th house connection. And the other yod is so obviously, Saturn-Neptune conjunction. Almost like everything in your chart to me leads back to the Saturn-Neptune conjunction in the 8th house. And probably that's why so many things happened around that at the same time. The moment that conjunction was triggered by transit, it was very, very eventful. The skeletons in the closet, general meaning of the 8th house planets is very interesting in this chart as well to me. How many times when you have something going on in the 8th house and it's so connected to other planets in the chart, there always comes a time in your life when things get revealed, things get, unearthed from deep below, from underground in the 8th house.
Yeah, I see that too. I think Neptune's really important there. Was the first thing I noticed. and it can be the betrayal part of it, the part of it where you think you have the happy marriage, and that's a big betrayal there.
Yes. We don't know
Okay.
for sure just by looking at the chart that there will be a betrayal, because at the end of the day, Neptune can come up as other things as well. You know, every planet has so many different meanings. But
And I
Yes.
always thought of Saturn and Neptune is that that sort of the discipline and the ability to space out in a good way, not in a neglectful way, that those two are married, so that as a musician and as a mathematician, that type of thing, they helped. That's, I never had even thought of what you guys have said, but now that you've pointed it out, I always thought of Saturn Neptune as a good thing.
it could be a good thing. It's not a bad thing. I don't like the idea that anything in the chart is good or bad.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, you may have been experiencing these two planets on two completely different planes in your life. So,
Yeah.
you know, the eighth house is also other people, not just the resources of other people, but also all sorts of relationships, business, personal, going deep into the realm of mixing with others. And so these two planets could have been projected. So your husband or other people could have lived, let's say, a negative part of their meaning, but you personally may have also experienced them as something very positive, mutually supportive, because you know how Saturn can stabilize Neptune and bring it back to the ground when it's actually very dreamy and unrealistic most of the time, or somehow, you know, in the realm of the subconscious and the outside of earthly reality. So Saturn can be a help to Neptune, but Neptune can also be a help to Saturn, the other way around, you know, to break the mold of all those strict patterns that Saturn can bring into your life and make you a lot more creative and a lot more productive at the same time. So this can be a powerhouse combination as far as I'm concerned. It's not something bad, but because it is, I think because it is connected with this T-square, it's connected to other forces in the chart, the actual dramas and problems, and maybe if we're trying to look for karmic stuff as well, maybe coming from the Chiron, maybe coming from the other aspects as well. So the moment that this is activated, something else comes out from the eighth house as well. So what do you think? What do you guys think about that? I have a feeling Chiron is in the 12th house. Not because I want to be an advocate to this house system that I use, but just my general feeling is that maybe it makes more sense in the context of what you said about the circumstances, that Chiron may be in the 12th house.
And also I noticed that you've got, is that a sextile between Chiron and Jupiter?
It is, yes, and an exact one.
And what does that make Chiron more potent or exaggerated when it's aspected like that to Jupiter?
It's very interesting that I just stumbled upon a comment by Liz Green about the connection in the chart between Chiron and Jupiter. And she was saying they can be mutually very supportive, especially you have them in a sextile. They're both centaurs. They're completely different centaurs in mythology and in the sky as constellations. But they have something in common. You know, Sagittarius, referring to Sagittarius and Chiron, they're both centaurs. And while one is, you know, they're both explorers of the depth. They're both philosophers. There is something about philosophy related to them. But as much as Sagittarius is this positive feeling and intuition about the future, and more wants to a little bit disregard the questions around Chiron. So she's saying that if you have them connected, it may be that this pain, which is usually referred to around Chiron, the pain of having to accept something which is not solvable, not able to, a wound that cannot be healed literally, then maybe the connection with Jupiter is somehow numbing the pain in your life, and you're ending up being a lot more positive, a lot more, you know, you're not tending to be the victim or to victimize yourself, or to, martyr, feel like a martyr of something, but the opposite, to kind of work through it. And I think Jupiter can be of great help here, because through Jupiter you can do what we are meant to do with Chiron, to become, to find the meaning in the pain, kind of thing.
Yes.
As
And when you had mentioned earlier, that Jupiter being in Taurus, right? Then it can it can help ground through a difficult experience or a wound.
And it's also in the second house, not just in Taurus, but also, well, as far as this is showing us.
Right.
Yeah. There are so many dimensions of that we can, if we spend more time with the chart, I'm sure we are all missing so much here because it's just too quick at the moment, isn't it? But yes, there are many things.
Yes, it's very helpful to see that. I've never thought of these things before.
Okay, that's great. Would you like to Would you like me to show another one, just to have another parallel to Chiron, another example of Chiron?
Could you look at the Saturn in my chart that you were going to look at?
I don't know why I don't have you here, but I can very quickly open it, because I think you maybe I sent you the link separately. Let me just very quickly open your chart. I have it in my list.
You said there may have been a Chiron square at the same time as...
Yeah, I was going to, but unfortunately there is no way we can see that in the chart, because Chiron is so erratic. It doesn't have this strict, regular time frame like we can have with the others to calculate it. But I will check it in the book as we.
But my Chiron is totally conjunct with Pluto on the descendant.
Let us see. Here we are. This is Raven's chart. Very interesting Chiron. Yes, definitely. I will leave you to comment and speak about it. I'll grab the book so I can check the date about the first square of your Chiron.
Okay.
Yes, you can talk about it. I mean, you don't need to wait for me. Everything leads, you see, this is an enormous T-square, isn't it, in this chart, leading to Chiron Pluto.
Yeah.
I imagine there has been a lot of drama around relationships, Raven.
Yeah. Lots of trouble. In fact, it made me question whether for some people, even though the relationships are really troubled, that maybe the relationships themselves are a way to work out something, like on a larger level. Since I've had a lot of relationships with heavy aspects between me and another person, cardinal cross and my first husband, and different Pluto kinds of things, I wonder if it's kind of like going through the fire, like the relationships themselves make transformation. Do you think that's possible?
Oh yeah, of course. Yes. Obviously, your chart is pointing to very difficult, somehow, experiences, lessons that had to be learned through some very extreme experiences in relationships, because we've got not just Chiron, the Pluto next to Chiron, I think, is what's really exacerbating the effect of it. And Pluto is the ruler of all your planets in Scorpio. You've got so many planets in Scorpio that are also aspecting it, on the top of the chart. And that's making Pluto even stronger. And from my point of view, there could be no stronger so far transformational force than Pluto. And your Pluto is involved with Chiron, which probably made it very real, very physical. We can go through very heavy Plutonian crises without anything eventful happening in our life. Everything could be internalized, it could be an internal crisis. But with Chiron there, I think there was no way for this to be kept inside you. Something
That's right. That's
outside.
right. Yeah, it's always been a big crisis. And now it's Pluto is transiting the ascendant for me now.
Mm-hmm. I can give you the dates if you're interested. So I didn't quite say things properly before. Actually, Raven is from a generation 1940. Is one of those years when Chiron, people born in around this year, they had their first Chiron square very early in life. So
wow.
Your first square, and what the books say is that if you are one of those people, you go through very severe emotional, spiritual experiences related to Chiron, and everything that Dwayne earlier explained about what we can expect when we have something related to that very early in life, in an age when you're not able to process it, to consciously work with
right.
Very
That's right.
So with you, this first time was at the end of 1946. So you were just 6 years old at the time.
Yes. Yes, that's when my father left.
This is
before he died. Yeah. He left when I was 6. Yeah. And we moved. My brother died too. At birth, the baby being born at that same year died at birth.
And that was 1946.
Yes.
And Chiron should have made the first square to its natal place. And following the chart, we can see that probably Chiron was somewhere over the Scorpio planets at that time that we're talking about.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It was not just making a square to its natal place, but it was activating this enormous T-square in your chart at the same time. So that's making it more significant for you personally than for another child born in the same year. If that makes sense.
Yes, that figures. That all figures. Yeah. Well, okay. Thank you, Radalina.
No, this is such an interesting example. I think for others as well. Then you had 1955. If you want, we can do this very quick tracing, as you have lived all those phases in your life, and maybe you can share with us if you want. Of course, if you remember anything more significant in 1955 in your life, is that's when you had your opposition, Chiron opposition.
Yes, I do. I had a near-death experience. I had a really unusual experience in that my mother sent a photograph of me to Otto Preminger's search for a girl to be an actress in Joan of Arc. And I won that. I was supposed to go like Jean Seberg and a number of women. But the day that I won it and I was supposed to go, my mother wouldn't take me. And and that was the year. And right after that, I had a car accident. I was in a car accident where I nearly died. Both of those were right next to each other, those two events in that year.
Right. So I'm sorry for if you guys think we were not moving fast enough. I'm deliberately, doing this with Raven's chart and the previous one because it's probably going to make more sense with us if we follow the cycle with one chart, and then we can see, of course, we can see others as well. But I think this chart, Raven's chart, is so concentrating on Chiron and so eventful. I'm even thinking if you are up to it, we might do another session on Chiron, because here on my list, at the same time with so many people today, at the same time there were several charts on my list.
Yes, let's do
very
another.
Interesting, transformative things. Kind of I don't know. I was very curious to hear what people will say. Let me know at the end. We normally decide at the end of the session what we're doing next week. So if you're happy with this idea, or if not next time, another time for Chiron,
Yes.
we've got so much to explore around it.
Take all our time on my stuff when people are there.
No, you're not. I mean, you're not in any. I chose it. I chose it as an example because it's such an interesting. I think you would agree. Finally, I have another question for you, Raven. Before we move on to another chart, what would you say about 1976-78? Would you remember anything?
Yes, I remember it clearly because I was in Seattle and I had just finished some classes and I asked someone where I should go. It's too long a story, so I won't go into it. But they said you should go to New Mexico, and I went immediately and went to a filmmaking school there and worked with Native Americans for 14 years as a result of that. I immediately left and was on my own in the reservations and stuff.
So we can see in all those 3 points in the cycle of Chiron, you had very significant life-changing events happening.
Exactly.
And then, of course,
may I? Oh,
yes, go
may
on.
I just ask, how can one find the calculations of those squares that you're speaking of? Is there a place to find that, or a methodology that I could follow after we're done today and look
Yes,
at those things?
Lauren, can you see my screen at the moment?
All I can see is the chart of Raven.
You don't see me? You don't see my screen?
No, I don't know how to make it. Oh, wait a minute.
All right. Actually, no, never mind, because I think it's going to be better if I show you all here while we speak. Just very quickly going to my page, to the reading list, because all the books are there.
Okay.
And Dwayne showed us this book earlier in his presentation. It's the same book I'm referring to. If you made a note of it there, let me just. So this is the one. Because this book has, at the end of it, it's got tables, reference tables.
Aha.
Year by year. So I'm seeing, I don't know if you see what I'm showing. It's a little small.
I can see the book by Barbara Handclough.
Yeah, so in that book, I'm just holding that book, and you see, these are the kinds of tables she's got at the end of the book, following through.
Like an ephemeris? Is it an ephemeris?
I'm sure that you can find out information online. You don't need the book. I mean, it's just that I'm looking in the book and I know it's there. But I'm sure that if you Google it, if you Google Chiron, cycle of Chiron or something like this, and you search for your particular year of birth, then you would be able to find it. I'll search. I haven't checked. I'm sure that it's somewhere, and I can post on the page later if you wish to.
Good. I see. I had, I'm working out. I figured out how to see you. I somehow, in the presentation that Dwayne was giving, I wanted to be able to read everything, so I had reduced all the people videos. Anyway, thank you. I'll look up that book. I'll buy that book.
It's a good book. I'm not sure if it's available on Kindle, but maybe it is. So you can probably just have it as an ebook. Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
It's a really good book. Yes. Let me go back to where were we? Yes, I'm going to switch to another chart, but you see, this is something very interesting to explore in Raven's chart if we ever have the opportunity again later on. Now,
Thank you.
who would like? Thank you, Raven, for volunteering all this, personal information.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Which one shall I go to now? Any one of you wants to volunteer to take a look at their charts?
Yeah.
Laura?
Okay.
I promised Laura in the beginning, so we're going to see Laura's one at the moment. Let me just take a look at this. Here you are. Okay. Now, just to say, because I looked at it quickly, to give you a very brief shortcut, we've got Chiron conjunct the South Node and opposite the North Node. It's in Pisces in the 6th house, as we can see, opposite Pluto, and square the Moon, and opposite the Sun. So many aspects. Would you like to comment yourself, Laura? How do you live through this?
That's a really good question. The last 10 years have been really, really challenging with Neptune and transiting Neptune in my 6th house, opposing everything. Mm-hmm. I've had some very serious health issues. I've even had premonitions about my own death. When I had my Chiron return, I got married. Uranus and Jupiter were right across on my descendant in my 7th when I got married. I could go on. I mean, I've done a lot of spiritual work. I've worked on the Navajo reservation as well. I have a duality between working in mainstream healthcare and doing a lot of energy work and spiritual work, shamanic studies, that kind of stuff. I've lived alone pretty much my whole adult life until I got married.
Are you still married?
I am actually. The two of us have big grand trines together. We're both double Earth, so we actually are getting along. He's got his North Node, South Node is opposite mine. He's a Taurus, but his North Node is in the is in the 6th house, and like he knows the 12th house, and I'm learning the 12th house. And his moon is conjunct the South Node in the 12th house. So his moon is in the 12th house. My sun is in the 12th house. So we really have a very strong spiritual connection. He's Catholic. I'm definitely much more energy oriented, metaphysically, esoterical, Native American, shamanic-y kinds of things. But he embraces my stuff, and I love being Catholic.
Well, that's good.
That's very interesting. This huge 12th house is very linked to your Chiron by birth. So I guess every time you have something going on around Chiron as a transit, your stellium is being activated. I think that's crucial, isn't it? But then we have, as with Raven, we've got a T-square here also, with the moon
That's right.
on top of the T-square.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just recently had an astrologer, an evolutionary astrologer, talk about a misstep. So I've been recently, just in the last week or so, processing that misstep, and then I saw this presentation today. So it's like fascinating and helping me to kind of understand my moon and how that fits in. And if I can say something else, sure. I have Capricorn at 24, at least the way I've been processing it. I have Capricorn at 24 Saturn. Mm-hmm. Conjunct Jupiter at 28. So there's all that Capricorn that's been coming in. And so it's been like in the last 10 years from that Neptune opposition to now dealing with this Saturn at 24 Cap with Pluto right on top of it. So
you are in the middle of both your Saturn return and Jupiter return at the same time.
Right. Yeah.
At the moment. And all these Capricorn planets are probably really affecting you, but they're kind of the way I see it from first glance is they're helping switch the direction of the energy to the Venus Saturn Jupiter opposition. You've mm-hmm. got this dynamic here, and this dynamic is so separate from the T-square. So maybe this is giving you an opportunity to concentrate on the Venus ones now. I guess it may have something to do with Venus not having been activated for many years.
Right.
And has been activated.
In the last year, I dropped 70 pounds.
Really?
Yeah, actually too quickly, but yeah.
It's a direct mirror image, the way I like to think about oppositions, a challenge to your Venus from those planets here, and they probably helped in that process.
Yes, I totally agree. Because I've neglected my Venus for so many years, and all of a sudden, and if I just add about the band, mm-hmm. In the time, I actually did ceremony with the 2 other band members and my husband with Chiron, when Chiron went into Aries, I feel like I've had a lot of struggles with my father. And so when the Saturn return started to come in was when these men came into my home. That's where they rehearse. And it brought in so much energy. It's really helping to shift. I mean, there's dietary things and other things with that Neptune too, but I think that they really are helping to catalyze, like it's enough male energy now to help heal from the wounds of my father, where it was a negative energy. And now these guys are bringing in a positive energy with some great music.
Yes, sounds great. And Pluto is just entering your 5th house. Pluto is just more or less at the cusp of the 5th house. So Pluto is going to be transforming your 5th house for many years to come. As it's so slow, isn't it? I guess that may have to do with the continuation of the changes that you're already seeing, I guess.
And then with the Venus with that too?
Yeah, definitely, because it's always linked to it by the opposition. But yeah, I diverged a little bit, sorry, from the Chiron. But if you guys have other observations also, I think it's connected to the Chiron, because I think probably Laura had so many years and situations constantly revolving around this T-square in her life. And either the moon or the Chiron conjunct South Node, was the astrologer that was talking to you referring to the skipped step that you mentioned as the South Node? Was it the South skipped step? Because that's normally what's meant by that.
I don't really understand too much, but it's like she was.
Okay.
My understanding is that I was. Go on.
Chiron has something to do, obviously, in this chart, because it's conjunct the South Node. It obviously has something to do with the karmic past. So we can understand that however we want to understand it. We don't need to believe in reincarnation. But whatever you were born as emotional baggage, is some sort of subconscious memory of a pattern, of a repeating pattern. This has to do with your 6th house and with Chiron. So Chiron was part of the history of where you're coming from. And this is always an issue that nowadays, in this lifetime, we need to rework, revisit, reform in a way. We need to balance with the nodes. So the idea is to learn something about the opposite node, what stands opposite to your Chiron and to your South Node, which is the North Node in Leo conjunct Uranus, in your case. So that's some sort of a key to working with the issues of Chiron. But something around Chiron presumably went wrong or went unbalanced before. So it's not that easy nowadays in this lifetime to work with it. And it's 6th house, so maybe something to do with the body, with the balance of the energies of the body. I don't know, one of the options. And interestingly, your node is in Aquarius, but Chiron is in Pisces. So there is a mixture of energies here, and we need to spend more time to get into really extracting something from here. I don't want to go into it too much at the moment, but yeah, it's crucial Chiron. It's almost like you were Chiron in your previous life. It's they say planets conjunct the South Node speak about the history of what the person was embodying before somehow. Yeah.
And with the axis going into the 12th house,
yes, well,
the healing potential, or
your North Node, which is one of the general meanings of the North Node, is what we need to do in this life as a lesson, as a journey, as an experience, is in the same house as all of those other planets, including the Sun. So this is a very direct message from the chart that something in the 12th house really requires your attention. Anyway.
Thank you so much.
I just want to note that Radalina, you said your North Node was in the 12th house. Yeah. Mine is in the 12th house, and Laura's is in the 12th house. Do you think
the North Node in
that
the 12th
brings a part of us that brings us to astrology and this exploration?
Mm-hmm. Maybe you're right. Maybe it has a lot to do with it. Yes.
Who knows?
I haven't thought of it this way, but yes. Anybody else with the North Node in the 12th house among us?
Barbara Clow.
Oh, Barbara Clow, of course. You know?
Interesting.
Interesting.
Very
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Well, I think if you have it in Pisces, it could have a similar meaning as well, I guess. Yeah.
Hmm.
Okay. Any other comments on Laura's chart? Shall we move on to another one?
Just want to say that I find it interesting that Chiron is in Pisces and such a focal point, and so many of your other planets are in the 12th house, which is the house associated with Pisces and I guess Neptune. I don't know if I'm making that fatal flaw.
This is a very good point.
But it feels like, yeah, because the 12th house is, I always think of it as, I don't know, like quite oceanic. And I always think of Pisces as quite self-sacrificing.
Yes.
So I don't know what that all means, but there are definitely clear themes there.
Very good, Gabriela. This is so much to the point, because that's well spotted. Maybe in the South Node story there is something sacrificial going on, almost like Laura having a history of sacrificing something or suffering. Physically.
I'm sorry. It's.
Do you hear me? Is it okay? The sound?
No. Would you say it again?
I was saying that Gabriela made such a good point about the connection of the Piscean connection, the Neptunian connection in your chart. She said that your Chiron is in Pisces, but you've got so many planets opposite it in the 12th house, which is like a repeated topic, the Pisces topic, the Neptune topic.
Yes.
Notice that actual Neptune is in, say, easy aspects with both of these sides. It makes a sextile to Chiron, and the trine to, the other way around, the trine to Chiron and a sextile to the planets, most of the planets in the 12th house. So you have like a full circle of Neptunian, Piscean significators in your chart. So maybe in the sense of what Gabriela said, it's worth exploring Neptune in the second house as a tool for working out all the rest of the nodal axis balancing and everything else. But
well,
yeah,
it sure would be nice to have some money.
Well, I don't know. This Neptune in the second house is probably not going to bring literal money, but some other assets, spiritual assets, is what they're associated with. Some sort of, I don't know, more intangible assets.
My husband, his Neptune is by itself, sitting right on top of his MC in his 10th house, and he's a musician.
Okay. Well, music is
very intangible.
Very intangible. Yes. But yeah, this is also, Gabriela said, I don't know if you heard what she said about the sacrificial element, that there may have been a history, because the South Node conjunct Chiron in the 6th house, of sacrificing something or suffering from something. And I assume this is to do with the body. It's on a physical level somehow, because of the 6th house. But we don't know. We can.
Well, I've been overweight. I never had my own children. I just recently lost this extra weight. And then with the Venus kicking in, it's shifting that, I think. So, and then as an occupational therapist, I've worked my whole adult life without really having my own family. And that's really been a struggle now, especially with the band coming in. And I think that they're really bringing in a very strong Neptunian energy. And they have actually agreed to let me do some of the booking for them. Of course, now we have, the quarantine and everything. So it's interesting. I never looked at it quite that way, but where that Neptune does have that trine and sextile, and how that's maybe it's underneath the the T-square in a sort, kind of supporting from underneath, it looks like.
Yes. Well, maybe managing their finances or something like this. I'm just, imagining things as we speak. But this Neptune in the 2nd house could be related to getting involved with the physical management of the resources of musicians. It's just trying to translate into possible ways to use that. But yeah.
And I've been moving into that. I have been moving into that. So it's right on.
What you mentioned is also can illustrate for us Saturn in the 5th house as part of difficult aspects. Saturn is not just in the 5th house. very often people don't follow the traditional route of, you know, what society expects, that you get married up to a particular age, to have children and so on, with Saturn in the fifth house. And now the Saturn is under pressure again with the return.
Right.
Maybe bringing back things and so on. But yeah.
Yeah, I definitely have an eccentric side to me.
Okay. Any more comments? Shall I move on to another one? I wondered whether you would like to look at Xavier's chart. Xavier?
Sure, yeah.
Are you happy?
You're more than welcome to. By the way, you pronounce it Xavier because I'm not Spanish.
I'm sorry. Please.
That's quite all right.
What's the right way to pronounce your name?
Xavier.
Xavier.
Yes.
Good.
And before you throw my chart up, I wonder if anybody would be interested in hearing a little more about the mythology of Chiron,
yes,
because I feel like we've only touched upon it a little bit.
Yeah, we should have covered this because it's.
I would love to hear. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm a big Liz Green fan, so I've read all her books on mythology, and she loves Chiron. She absolutely loves him. When we think about Greek mythology, we think about Zeus as being the guy that goes out there fornicating with all the beautiful women, but it was actually a trait he caught from his dad, Kronos, or Saturn in the Roman sense. His dad, Kronos, kind of fell for a sea nymph by the name of Philyra, who was a little bit prudish. She wouldn't go near gods. She didn't like them. So Kronos disguised himself as a horse, because in Greek mythology, horses are associated with the sea, with Poseidon, Neptune, and got his way with this sea nymph. She gave birth to this half-horse, half-human creature, which was Chiron, and she immediately rejected it, which is Chiron's first wound. He was rejected by both his parents. Kronos, you know, as an indifferent god, went off eating rocks or what have you, and he was left to grow up by himself at the base of a mountain. Some of the other nymphs and some of the other demigods took pity on Chiron, and they taught him the ways of the world. They taught him about medicine, health, astrology, the stars. They taught him about history, and he became incredibly learned. Now, we always refer to Chiron as a centaur. However, he wasn't exactly like the other centaurs. The other centaurs were 2/3 horse and a bit human. You know, you've got the horse with the human torso, if you like. Whereas Chiron was more like a man, but instead of a butt, he had a horse sticking out of his back. So he had like man's legs. And which was another reason why his mother Philyra rejected him. So he didn't feel a part of anything. The centaurs were very wild and restless, and they would run about across the plains, fornicating, drinking, firing arrows at the sun and all sorts of things, whereas Chiron would much prefer to sit in his cave and learn about things. Once Chiron got older, because he was so learned, he became a teacher to a lot of Greek heroes, including Achilles, Jason, and Heracles. And it was he was hanging out with Heracles. Heracles was a bit of a cad. He didn't know his own strength, if you like. He was always knocking stuff over and inadvertently killing his wife or what have you. But Heracles was messing around with some arrows one day, and the Greek myth does say that it wasn't in the context of combat or anything like that. It was an accident, and he managed to launch a poison arrow into Chiron's thigh. This arrow had been imbued with the poison of the Hydra, which is usually fatal for most things. But because Chiron was the offspring of a god and a nymph, he was immortal. So he had this arrow stuck in his thigh. He tried to heal it, and the irony is that despite his deep knowledge in healing and medicine, he was unable to heal himself from this wound. So he was in constant pain, and he was potentially going to be living with this constant pain forever, because he was immortal. Chiron put himself down to that. He was like, okay, well, I'm going to live with this. That's absolutely fine. And so he went on with his life being in constant pain. But eventually Prometheus, who, if you know your mythology, Prometheus gave fire to humans. He stole it from the gods and gave it to the humans. He was punished for it, but humans weren't able to handle it. We were too busy burning everything. We didn't know what to do with this fire. Prometheus was being punished by the gods by being chained to a rock and having his liver put out by flames every day, which isn't very nice. Chiron, in a sense of self-sacrifice, decided to take Prometheus's place so he could actually end his life. He could die and Prometheus could go on and help us out with the fire. So Chiron's wounds were being rejected by his parents at a very young age, and that physical mortal wound that he took that caused him immense pain, but he couldn't actually heal, which was a shame. So when I look at Chiron in charts, I always ask the question, what is the wound that you can't heal, and how are you teaching it to other? I'm very sorry, I've forgotten the person's chart that we last looked at, but I found it very interesting that you're an occupational therapist and your Chiron's in Pisces and you had all that action in the 12th house. I kind of feel that the thing that you're trying to teach was a very Piscean thing. You know, you as a therapist, I suppose, you're trying to get people out of their own shells, if you like, and that's how I see Chiron coming out through a chart, if you like. So that's just a little summary. I don't know if you've got any questions about the mythology, but it kind of gives you a little bit of context to how Chiron manifests in your chart, if you think. I mean, you could see Chiron is conjunct my Mercury. I'm a Gemini rising, so you know, my ruling planet of Mercury is afflicted with this Chiron energy, and it's square Saturn, another Saturn square. So I think I know how that manifests in my life. I'd be interested to get somebody else's opinion, perhaps.
Am I seeing that the Chiron is at what degree? And you're saying it's conjunct. What is? I'm having trouble seeing the degrees.
It's 27 degrees Aries.
20 is the Chiron 27 Aries, and the Mercury is also 27.
Yeah.
Exact conjunction, yes.
Oh my goodness.
You have such a great 12th house as well.
I know, yeah. There's a lot of 12th house energy going on here.
As a contrast to all of us that had it, you know, the North Node. What was it? North Node in the 12th? You have the South Node in the 12th. So
True, yeah.
You've got something to teach us here about how to do that North Node in the 12th house.
Well, when I think about the nodes, I think about how we deal.
Chiron is in the same place. That's why I.
Yeah. No, I understand. But when I think about the nodes, I always think about how we default in a time of crisis. So my South Node in the 12th, I'm very happy being at home. I've been very happy in lockdown to my own detriment. When I should be getting out there, I'm just very happy just sitting on my couch. That's how I think my North Node manifests. But yeah, you're right.
Have something to do with your moon on the IC, possibly?
Quite possible, yes. Yeah, in the 4th, yeah.
Yeah, and this the moon is square Chiron, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And yeah,
Saturn's only a degree out of the square as well.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's very interesting. It's almost like Saturn is much closer. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
If you like Liz Green, you may tell us something about this connection between Saturn and Chiron. I feel like you know this, how people often confuse the two, the processes of the two, Chiron and Saturn, and how do you see the difference?
Well, the way when we think about it from an astrological perspective, when Chiron's its closest to us, it touches the orbit of Saturn, and when it's its furthest, it touches the orbit of Uranus. Mm-hmm. And Saturn in Greek mythology was Kronos, so there's always that conflict between Saturn and Chiron, I think. So obviously, Kronos. He was very ambivalent about Chiron, as gods are. So I feel that there is a little bit of conflict. They don't really. I think Chiron's there to kind of help us deal with those Saturnian issues that we face, especially at returns or at squares, I think.
I've
my
lost the
chart,
program.
Yes, Raven?
I've lost the program, Radalina. Can you help me?
We can hear you. We can hear you pretty well. Yes, what do you not see the screen? Okay, let me see. Dwayne, you are still the host of the meeting. Would you like to try and unmute Raven, because I think she accidentally muted herself. There needs to be like a little mic next to her. Okay.
Okay.
I'm really interested in the aspect of looking at this chart of that the Chiron and the Mercury conjunct are in Aries with the Sun in Aries. So it's like, I think of the Chiron and Mercury as being, like when they're conjunct like that, is the woundedness of the communication ability, but also in Aries that is wants to fire out there and, you know, have something strong to say, is the impulse, especially with the Sun in Aries. You want to, I have Sun in Aries, Moon in Leo also, so you want to express, but then with a Chiron Mercury conjunct, I would think there would be a difficulty in communicating somehow and expressing yourself, and that there would be a tension between those two things built into the chart.
I think you're absolutely right. That's exactly how I see it. And all throughout my life, I do struggle with communication. I'm not so bad with face-to-face communication, but if you ever send me an email or a text, and you know, don't expect a reply, don't expect an articulate reply either. And it's not because, you know, I'm an awkward person. It's just not in my nature to do that. Self-expression is something that's been very, very difficult in my life as well. And like you say, I really want to get my voice out there, but there's a lot of second guessing. You know, there's a lot of not feeling like what I have to say has any value. And, you know, whether or not that's true is depending on the content. But it's always something, I'm always second guessing myself on what I have to say. So yeah, I couldn't agree more with your assessment.
And the emphasis that it also that the moon being in Leo, you almost have to express, you have to have a stage, but then it's got all the red lines to it, you know, so it's also set up to be a constraint, and that it's with that opposition to Uranus. That's really in Scorpio, that's that deep desire, you know, to even serve, to be of worth, to have something that you can really serve humanity with as well. So I see that that's like a built-in tension of constraint.
You're absolutely right. Yes, it's a huge basis of conflict for me, and it's something that I need to resolve in my life. I think that's the whole point of my life, to be honest, to try and figure that out. And I think that's kind of the whole point of Chiron in your chart. You have this issue, this wound, this conflict, if you like, and you've got to suss it out somehow. That's how I see it. It's taken me so long to be aware of these things as well. It's only in the last sort of 5 years that I've understood that I've had this conflict within me. So astrology.
Finish, I'm sorry.
It's funny
I was just going to say that sometimes for me, my solutions, when I'm looking, okay, what's the way out of constraint? I just focus on all those blue lines. What flows?
Right. Yeah.
And so your ascendant in Gemini also speaks to communication. Now it's going up to your midheaven, so how you're seen, and to your your power of your eloquence, of that Libra and creation of the 5th house, right? Am I right to see it that way?
I think so.
So that your power is in your sense, and you also have a beautifully aspected Venus up there. Is your Venus in Aries?
Yes, 1 degree.
1 degree into it. And that just flows. So I feel like your feminine is your feminine, and your sense of elegance and beauty and balance is somehow the encouragement to you to express yourself, that you really do have great value.
Warm words. Thank you very much.
Such great observations, Lauren, for me. Do you mind me adding something here in the same way, in the same line as you? It looks like a great communicator that is under the impression that is not such a great communicator. Going back to Saturn and Chiron affecting the sun, you know, the self-esteem and the self-projection and so on. I wanted to, when I asked you about the Saturn-Chiron difference, and you said you like Liz Green, she's saying, you know, one is solvable and the other one is not solvable. So kind of that how Saturn is reminding us of a deficiency, or it's just in our head. That's how I perceive it. This is not the reality of it. It's just having it positioned in your chart this way is more like how we're programmed to perceive it, to think about it. So obviously there is something to do with childhood things and parents, but I don't want to go there. I mean, I don't want you to feel like you need to comment on this. But, you know, Saturn and Chiron are connected. So we have the same wound from 2 different places, and from these 2 typical players that we normally expect it to come from. And she's saying, well, Saturn is something we can compensate. With hard work, with diligence, with patience, and so on. We can catch up with what we think somebody didn't give us in childhood, or we were somehow disadvantaged. It is solvable, the solvable part. While Chiron is something that we need to just put up with. Some obstruction we need to become very philosophical about. It's a moralist, she says. And this is the greatest difficulty there, that we don't want as the human part of Chiron, the reasonable part of the centaur, doesn't want to accept that you know, the power of the human spirit is not able to overcome certain things in life which are hard, which are painful, which are just a fact. And there may be some sort of communication difficulty there for you, but Chiron, I think, is saying you can do it even through it, even with it. And you know, I don't see any speech problems or anything like this with you, but I know people that have this in their 12th house, especially like Mercury in the 12th house. I've got a few examples very close to me. There are speech problems. You know, it's not that you have, and very often that's combined with something very powerful that you have to share. You know, as Lauren very well, I think, noticed with your North Node with Uranus in Scorpio in the 6th house, potentially this information that you've got inside needs to come out and serve. But there is something that's obstructing it. And yeah, I don't know. That's the way I see it.
Thank you.
I'd like to, can I make a comment?
Yeah.
What's jumping out at me, without, you know, really getting into the interpretation like with you guys, but is his geometry or the lines. Like he's got, and I don't know the different names, but is that like a grand, there's 2 it's,
There are 2 grand trines.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot, and then the mystical rectangle, and then there's a grand square. Yeah. It's fascinating the geometry here. And what's kind of jumping out is that Mars in the 1st house with Jupiter and that trine. I don't know why, you know, there's something, I don't know if that kind of can help drive some of, you know, maybe what what you were just saying, you know, about to kind of actualize that communication.
Yes.
And actually, I'd like to comment even farther, because you have a North Node Uranus conjunction, or, you know, 7 degrees. which I do, and it's opposite. Yours is, and it's in Scorpio, but it's in the 6th house. It's fascinating, the geometries. That's what I wanted to comment on, really.
Thank you. I don't think anybody's commented so nicely on my lines before.
I like them.
Thanks.
Well, one thing is obvious, that it's very dynamic chart, isn't it? Now we have charts with a lot less going on in terms of connection between the planets. Here there is a lot going on, and this rectangle between the fixed signs, is it between the fixed signs? Leo, Aquarius, Scorpio, and Taurus. Yes, that's the, and then the Grand Trine.
Oh yeah, you're taking my midheaven, yeah.
Yeah, Lauren spotted the Grand Trine in air, and this is maybe there is something paradoxical in this chart. That on the one hand, you're perceiving, best how, some communication issue or information issue, I don't know. But at the same time, you've got Grand Trine in air, which is supposed to be like a comfortable spot, of a comfortable area in there to take rest in, or to somehow recharge your batteries, or be strong in naturally. So this 12th house and everything, I see this as a misconception on your part, almost like somebody lied to you, told you that you're not a good communicator, and you believed in that. But actually this is just the contrary as far as the chart.
Well, you're right, somebody did lie to me. It was me. I lied to me, I think that's the issue. That's the Chiron, that's the arrow in my thigh.
Yeah, Mercury, the voice in your head, Mercury told you that. John Chiron. I don't know. No.
And from somebody else who has Mercury in the 12th house, I thought you explained Chiron very well, and you've been dialoguing quite well. So.
Yes.
Okay, good.
How do you see the Neptune in Sag there? How has that impacted you?
Neptune obviously is more of a generational planet, so everybody my age is going to have that placement in Sagittarius. However, it is on my descendant. I love my Neptune. I think I love Neptune in general, and not a lot of people do. It's my spiritual side. It's having that mindset in a higher place, if you like. Not necessarily a better place, but that's how I see my Neptune, and it's in a nice aspect with my moon as well. So yeah, I'd like my Neptune. I think it's great.
I would, and you look at it. It's one of it's one of the highlights of when I always am looking for assisting people when I do astrology. I always look for those. What is a point in the chart that flows and has all this good energy helping it? And your Neptune in Sag is like key to that. Me.
I find it, thank you. I find it interesting that Neptune's also retrograde. So because it's on the descendant, it's like, no, I don't want to go to bed. No, I want to stay in the light here. That's how I've always seen it.
Okay.
I think Lauren is absolutely right, and you are a little bit underestimating the importance of Neptune as a personal planet. This is just my personal opinion, but I don't share that vision that the trans-Saturnians, for example, the 3 outer planets, are less important because they're generational, especially if you happen to have one of them on an angle in your chart. But even if you don't have it on an angle, it's still a function inside us. But I think a lot of this stems from people still feeling like they are very alien, these 3 planets, and that not everybody is necessarily able to connect with them and to use them. But I think they are as personal eventually as all the others. But maybe we, all of us, like as a community, as a human species, I don't know how to say it, are getting into the direction slowly into integrating them. And when we start thinking about what is Neptune standing for as a psychological function inside you, you may discover that actually that's one of the most important ones, driving forces in your life. Is it?
Thank you very much. Yeah, thank you.
It got me wondering whether your partners or friends or associates could have been Neptunian.
My partner is a Pisces. Her sun is conjunct my Neptune.
Okay. Yeah, that's
So
all.
yeah.
That's good.
Guys, I want to look at one more chart because somebody asked me, and I actually had it here as one of the very interesting ones. So please forgive me if I get the name wrong again. Theodora. So let me just see where we are. Okay, look at that.
Wow.
We have a Chiron singleton in this chart.
I'm sorry, we have a what?
Okay, so Laura, a singleton is one planet separated from a bunch of planets which are together. Mm-hmm. So that's why I say it's a singleton, because you know all of her planets here are so concentrated in the sixth house. No, I'm no longer going to brag about my sixth house. Well, this is a full sixth house, not mine. You know, this is a very, very prominent sixth house. Obviously, South Node also here, North Node in the 12th, Chiron in the 12th. Would you like to comment on your own chart? If you want to, let me know. We can just discuss it.
Whose chart is this?
So this is Theodora. I'm sorry. Is it Theodora?
Yes, it's perfectly pronounced. Yes.
Perfect.
Well,
Theodora, do you want to say something about your chart before we start rambling about it? Without
no, maybe after.
After, okay. Let us make suggestions and guesses, and then you can tell us whether we are right or wrong. What do you guys think?
I think it's fascinating, the similarity in the charts that we've been reviewing today.
Yes, there is a 12th house pattern emerging. 12th house, 6th house axis.
Sounds like a topic coming up. Maybe another topic to pursue next time or future near.
I can jump with some suggestions if you would like.
Yes, please.
For example, I don't know if it's any connection to this, but it's like I kind of see myself as a healer's mission, but I don't know my healing, let's say, my healing thing or way. But I had like a very difficult time, like a very interesting illness, actually, which was at the age of 16 up to 18, when I had sort of like so the bone died on a little part, and I actually found so much strength in me that I healed myself and carried along many others. And it felt to me that was the job I missed, or my mission that I missed, let's say. And since then I have never had the full how should I say, fully lived my job. Yeah, well, another time. Yes, when working with children, but not that way. I mean, to be that meaningful, to help people, even if I didn't have the job, actually, because I was still underage, and I only inspired people around me who behaved in the same way and are walking today because of me, because of my belief that if you're moving, even though you're in great pain, you're going to heal. That's what inspired. And I think it's self-worth thing, which I always had, being in Taurus, Chiron being in Taurus.
And opposite your sun.
Yeah, and opposite my sun, yeah.
Yes.
And not only the sun, it's also Venus and Mercury, so everything else. I mean, way of thinking, of feeling, of Venus valuing also values.
The self-value and the self-esteem issues. Maybe
Yeah.
you know the very good magazine, Apollon magazine of psychological astrology. Only 6 issues of that came out in the early 2000s, and Liz Green was one of the authors there. In one of those, it's available online for free. I can send you a link. And in
Yeah,
one of
please.
those issues, she has a very brilliant article about Chiron and the sun. This may be very relevant to you, Theodora, because she's talking about when the sun is in aspect to Chiron in the chart, how this impacts exactly those questions of self-value and the desire to live against the desire to give up. The give up in difficulty against the high spirit of overcoming all sorts of challenges, especially physical, similar to wounding in one way or another, with this interaction. I just wanted to, when you said, did you say 16 years old, when you were 16 years old?
Yes.
So I just looked at the book at the table, and this was the year 1998, when you were 16. This was the year of your Chiron opposition, which means that Chiron was over the sun, Mercury, here, all those planets that are opposing your Chiron by birth. Actually, you had your Chiron opposition in that year.
And now actually I'm facing another very difficult situation. And I was like, for 5 or so, 6 years, I know about it. And it's so frustrating because I kind of promised myself that day that, I mean, in our country, there were no available books telling you that there are spiritual causes to health issues. But it was very strange that by some chance, the high school I was studying at had a book that suggested that. So that is why I promised myself, because I found a spiritual cause to that. It was in the hip area, and it was about not trusting the universe. So I promised myself I will never have another, I don't know, illness caused by myself, let's say, in a way. That is what I believe. And only to find out, like 5 years or so, that there is a tumor, and it's on the endocrine system. And well, to that, the first one was easier to manage because it was like physical only, and it was like, okay, intuitively I kind of found that it's a physical solution, let's say, by movement. But here is also like chemistry, and it's much, much more subtle and much more to deal with. It's interesting enough that I never I look very normal. In even then, I mean, my mobility was censored in a way, but the overall mobility is very high. So it looked like I don't have anything, even to the doctors. So 16 to 18, they didn't believe me I have something because the X-rays would not show up, and there were not so many possibilities there then to back then to identify. And there were not so I don't know, MRIs so extensively used. So now I'm like kind of in the same or sort of another situation, and I think it's also connected because it's the 6th house, which is physical, I think.
Yes, it all makes such a great sense, I think, to everyone. I wanted to ask if someone wants to comment, maybe Dwayne, maybe others, on this yacht. Chiron is the top of a yacht in this chart, and you see what we've got on one side. Pluto conjunct Saturn. Exactly. So you were born in this special year, 1982, when for the last time we had Saturn conjunct Pluto, like we do now this year. And it's extremely difficult, let's say generational, whatever. But in your chart, this is very personal. It's activating Chiron through. So here, these two planets are connected to Neptune. Neptune conjunct the Moon, and the Moon can also be I think having a full sixth house is not guaranteeing health issues. It could be something else. But why maybe in your case it's so literally health issues is because the Moon is there, Neptune is there, and there are several planets which are kind of, especially the Moon to me, is very important, as this is the body as well, the functioning of the systems of the body, and it's conjunct Neptune. So this sends you back to the 12th house, to Chiron in the 12th house, kind of. I don't know if anybody wants to comment on this, because I think this is very significant, this yod.
I agree. I've been studying the yods. Dwayne can speak first if he's here. I don't see him right now.
I see him. He's here.
Oh, okay. If he wants to speak, he can go first. That was the first thing that occurred to me, is that it was the point of the yod. I look at I'll go ahead and just speak up first.
Go ahead.
I just feel strongly that that everything it's like the mission. I look at the yod as the finger of God. It tells you a clue about your mission in this incarnation, is the way I've always seen it. And so that there's some great benefit to mankind, even to all of us, because of your life aims towards that Chiron. Your ability to heal yourself and to discover the way to heal is critical to this lifetime's mission, and you can't kind of run from it with this kind of configuration. I was also thinking, with such a heavy sixth house like that, it does also show to me those health issues, and the health issues then become the impetus to this great physical, I look at Taurus as being the physical world, and also that it's in Taurus is also covering the 11th house, if you go the other way of doing house divisions, and that it also helps the community or the bigger humanity picture of whatever you go through personally, and you write about it or help other people understand. Like you said, you went out and helped other people overcome or heal their physical disabilities that happened with shifts that you make, in order to heal. And
but I helped like only the ones very near to me. I mean, the ones that were in the same hospital. I mean, I just of course they were like so only a few people. I mean, I don't know how to do that for the mankind, let's say.
But if you were to write it or to do something on internet and tell your story, then many more people than just your little community could have hope.
Or is it that there's universal themes that you understand and can share? Does that make sense?
Possibly, but because the North Node is in the same, let's say, on the same side of the chart, because it may not be, as Lauren said, maybe Chiron is in the 11th, but because the North Node is on the side which is Chiron, while the South is on the side which are all the other planets in the 6th house, me personally makes me think that you're already more connected, instinctively more connected and more able to work first with your personal experiences and struggles, 6th house, and then through the personal crisis, you can learn things that you can then transfer to. You have to deliberately decide to go there. You have to deliberately decide to open up to the bigger community, which is to do with the node and Chiron together. You know, both of them want the same thing from you, to open up for the wider impact. And maybe this is still to happen. You're still so young, and at the moment these transits of the outer planets are making exact square, by the way, to your natal. So you've got this same conjunction Pluto-Saturn, and you've got the same Pluto-Saturn squaring your Pluto-Saturn. So this could be an urge to revisit things and to make that step towards, you know, I don't know if this makes any sense to you, but I think you both got it right. Especially Lauren said is working through personal issues to then help the community in a way. But maybe you have to help it physically, because Taurus, the Chiron is in Taurus. So I guess in some physical way, you need to make the impact. I don't know.
Perhaps that's why I was thinking if she wrote about it and posted it on the internet, or wrote a book that went out so we could all read it, then it would give it physical form. Her healing could have physical form in a book, or her healing could have physical form in an internet blog, or whatever she decides to do.
Mm-hmm. And do you think that this will be, this is isn't this more reaching with information? Well, maybe I'm wrong, but I was more thinking reaching out physically, a kind of face-to-face, being able to help others. How to make this more global, I have no idea. Maybe if there are communities already of people who are somehow disadvantaged, and you can go there and you can join the calls, or you can join, you know, something charitable related to that. But yeah, we can speculate here. It could be so many different.
Actually, the gifts, there were so many blessings and gifts because of the first thing, and I discovered to be a great massage. I mean, just because doing physical therapy and being done by others massage, I am so very thankful, because I have like a very bad relationship with my mother. I think that can be shown maybe because of the moon in Capricorn, and maybe conjuncted also with Lilith, I think. And actually, this was the trust thing and issue that is connected with the bones, and which actually the disease was a blessing at that time, because it took me from home and transported me into the hospital, which world, which is not a nice world, but still it was out of the cone of the influence of my mother. And in spite of being so confusing a world, and a time one develops herself as a woman and an individual, because it's adolescence time, I had to focus. I really had to focus on the body, which I didn't before. Like, I was only reading and only studying and things like this. So a whole new world opened up. Massage things. I had to learn how to swim and to move, actually. And yeah, I think it was also opening to community, helping others, and it was really, really a great things came. I mean, meeting animals, seeing that I can get along extremely well with animals. A lot of talents and abilities came up. So
This is so
yeah, I'm
interesting about the
grateful
animals.
to the first one, but I can't find now how can I shift what's happening now, since back then I kind of managed to do that, like without any means. I mean, I was like an adolescent. The medical system was not helpful, and just by intuition, kind of discovered, and by wish of being things done, solved. I mean, I decided I will get healthy, and now I cannot find that same determination, let's say. And so, kind of like back then, I believed there is a solution. Now I don't believe.
Can I
I
say
believe
one?
more what the medical system. Well, I don't really believe everything, because if I would, I would have taken a surgery like 2 3 years ago. It has been said that it's an emergency like 2 3 years ago, and I didn't. I don't have the whole symptoms. That is so interesting, because people having this and this big a tumor, they are really in heavy pains like all the time, and they only work like, I don't know, maybe 4 hours a day and things like this, and have balance issues. And I have symptoms, of course, but I don't have disturbing symptoms, not at the physical body at least. But I do see them in the more subtle body now, like, okay, balance issues, not physical, but confusion. I see confusion in my life. So it's kind of like they kind of shifted inwards the symptoms, let's say.
That's interesting. I have a few things, but maybe I thought Lauren wanted to say something before.
The only thing is, I've been contemplating. I mean, I know we're just supposed to be talking about Chiron, and I like to help people. But so when you mentioned the endocrine system is being the point right now of disturbance, when I've known people with endocrine, and they do changes in diets and supplements, and they discover, that without those changes of their diet and supplements that they're taking, there's a person called Anthony Williams who wrote all this, who's a clairvoyant. And I have my best friend who has for 2 years changed her eating and supplements completely, and was revolutionized. She was having brain fog. She had no energy. They weren't the physical systems like limping or a broken arm, but they affected her whole life. And her attitude, it was depressing not to always be tired. And so she changed her diet. And then I think it occurred to me, the sixth house is sometimes talked about as a diet and what you ingest, your food. So I know this isn't Chiron, but
No, I changed a lot. I think one of the reasons why I don't have the symptoms and all the symptoms is because of this, because I really changed a lot in the diet. I mean, it's almost like I do it from time to time, meat, because well, I am, as I say, I'm going a bit. I always did, even in the first disease. I'm going against the current. I mean, if the medical system had said, okay, you will have balance issues, I just took high heels and started dancing. I went the opposite. Okay, you're not supposed, I don't know, to do this and that. I did that. I mean, I kind of challenged myself every time. And I'm a donor. I donate still blood, because I think it's very, very good for me. And if I don't eat meat from time to time, I cannot have the necessary level of iron. In order to donate blood, you have to have a certain degree of iron. And I noticed when I ate only plant-based, okay, I'm feeling very well, but you have to have a higher level as compared to the medium when you donate. What I took out according to that protocol is milk and dairies and things like this, which are very much connected to disturbances in the endocrine system, and they do create some cancers, especially in the breast and stomach area, which is like cancerian thing and connected to milk mother. So it's interesting also in astrology. But yeah, that is the thing that I took out, and I think that is the reason of my partial success, let's say.
I just wanted to say that we briefly, while you were talking, Theodore, I thought this topic of the sixth house is so relevant to so many of us, looks like, from the charts we saw today, especially your chart. And I was just suggesting, because there are others here on the call, there is no time, we're almost at the end today, but why don't we do a separate session if you want? Sometime, could be next time, could be another time, concentrating on the sixth house, because it's, as Paula was just commenting, it's so much deeper than just health issues. Health issues are one of the typical expressions of this personal crisis that we're meant to go through in one way or another in the sixth house. It's some sort of a personal crisis, and because it's an earth house, usually it comes out as health issues, and I think a lot of it is related to the moon being there in your case, but we already touched on this. But why don't we go through, if you want, you can tell me if you know how you see this. We can do like a conversation once about all the different expressions of the sixth house, and how we can share things about it.
Yeah, I'm sure. I think it's very important. Actually, that is something which is like, I think mission. It's something which is always, okay, what is my mission? I really cannot see very clear. It could be also seen the other way around. I mean, it is because I couldn't see clear my mission, let's say, for a long time, and it was a wounded place because of this. Maybe I created it. It has created this issue, which I don't know which part is more. I mean, is it physically? Physically, I don't feel it so much, because I learned in the first one to detach from the physical body, which was necessary at that time because of the pain. But I don't think it was helpful or healthy afterwards. And it's a pattern. I mean, now I have to reconnect with the body, and I don't really know how to do that. And maybe that is what is signaling to me, okay, get your attention on the body.
I think you're getting it very right. I would, if you asking me personally, I would come to the same conclusion, that all these problems are trying to tell you something, and that the chart is so unequivocal with this singleton Chiron there in the 12th house, opposite all the 6th house planets, that it's definitely to do with a mission. I see the whole 6th house concentration as a mission, because this aspect of the 6th house of really getting deeply involved in something, doesn't matter what, but serving to that something, really becoming a specialist in it, very good in it, so that you can transfer the service, the knowledge, whatever you're giving out to that thing, and total dedication to it. So maybe actually, if you want, we can frame it this way, not just the 6th house, but the 6th, 12th house axis, because it's an axis at the end of the day, isn't it? They're connected. We can't separate. I think we can separate the 6th house from the 12th house. So if you find this topic interesting, a lot of you have a lot of 12th house, and then a lot of you have a lot of 6th house. So maybe we can do that once. And go even deeper.
Yes.
Yes.
Can I make one final comment on the chart?
Yes.
I've just been, for some reason, fixated on the North Node, and noticed that it's in Cancer, and obviously in the 12th house. And I was just thinking that maybe if we look at it from the perspective of the 12th house being an exploration of the subconscious or unconscious, and Cancer being around emotions, but also around the mother, and the kind of link between the moon and the North Node. So maybe some sort of exploration around the subconscious feelings connected with mother might hold a clue to the chart.
Such a good idea. And it's rising also. Yeah, isn't it? Even though it's in the 12th house, you have it on your ascendant. So can reach out to it, as Gabriela said.
Well, I wanted to just make a comment about it too. I'm assuming that you just had a North Node return. And then because I am very conscious of the Pluto-Saturn energies that have been going on, it makes me wonder what was going on during your North Node return, if there was some kind of epiphany or something key that was presented to you as a medicine sign of a particular direction to go in. And I'm saying that more as a statement than a question, just something to ponder. But because of that Saturn-Pluto stuff is really shaking things up, and that was happening right, I would presume, right around your nodal return, if things were really shaking things up at that time, and what kind of clues you might get from that, if that's helpful at all.
It was which time?
Am
I right? North Node return?
So that was from about 1 year back. So you can count a few months back to when it was really exact, if that's correct, because the nodes go backwards, isn't it? So the nodes, actually, the node is going from Cancer. Let me see if I'm getting it right. At the moment, the nodes are at the end of Gemini, at the end degrees of Gemini. But just before that, they were in Cancer. So the North Node, I mean, was in Cancer. Now it's in Gemini. So it's going the other way to the clockwise instead of counterclockwise. Is that right? So the node stays in a sign for about a year and a few months. So I think Laura's question is related to about, say, a year and a half from now back, if you've noticed something.
It was so very difficult the last 1.5, 2 years actually. The last 2, but 1.5 actually, yes. In the job area, it was like, wow, crazy. Because what I actually do now, I'm a teacher. I'm a teacher of languages. So when I had that first thing, I wanted to become a kinetotherapist, and the doctors, they didn't allow me because they said I would not be able to stay like upright for a lot of time. And it was only I would have only been able at the time to study it within the sports university in our country. That means I would have to do ski and basketball and run, and they would not allow that. Okay, so I took the teacher's, let's say, line, and I was so happy for a few years, 7 years, when I worked with children, physical touch. I'm extremely good with working with children. I'm creative, I'm imaginative, I'm very warm, and everything softens for me when it's that. But that was not possible. And I entered the official and state system, and that's when things started to go like downwards. After 1 year, I gained like 10 kilograms like in 2 weeks. But I kept going on. I didn't know this. And I think that is when the tumor started to begin to form itself. So I was not happy in the job at all. And I always had for me, it was, I know my principles, my inside principles, and I will not step on them just because the boss says like that or like that. I know I have my good intuitions. I know I'm very, very sure. And things were since I entered the state, I think it was like I couldn't grow roots because I was like 1 year in one school, 2 years in another school, 1 year in another. And 2 years ago, I finally took the exam, which is like impossible here, almost impossible, because they don't give positions which can be held for life. And if they do, you have to have like make compromises, which I didn't. So I really managed on my own. And I said, okay, now I'm growing roots. Okay. And the manager was changed in the autumn, exactly when I started. So like 1 year and a half or so. And I mean, he has almost shattered my self-belief. I mean, he did shatter. It is only like a few days ago, now that I know I will not be in the school, that I managed to see a bit that, okay, whatever he said and the way he wanted, because it was more than only to, I don't know, do this and that. It was more about punishing. He behaved like in a destroying way. And I only realized like a few days, okay, so after all, he is just okay, now he's a manager, he's a boss, but he is only a man, he's not God. So I really, really let myself be very shattered by this authority, which I connect to being shattered by my primary authority, which is my mother, because she always do that. I know he is not the issue. It is my unsolved pattern with my mother. So I know that. And the irony is that within this 1.5 years, so it all started with, I mean, for him to become more personal and it about destroying myself, not about, I don't know, managing me, let's say. When I decided to take a course of 5 days in Greece, I mean, I applied and he said like, okay, the school decides which courses you're going to take. You cannot take a course on your own. And even though I had the legal the legal right to leave the school for 5 days, I kind of, let's say, forced him, because I put him in the face of the effect, because they send the invitation, that things like this. And the irony is that that course was about using theater in order to solve issues like aggressions and violences and affirmation. And they immediately saw that something was a bit off with my manager, and they said, you have the Stockholm syndrome about him. Don't protect him. Would you like to work on this? And I said, no, it's fine, it's okay. And when I came back, things started to go very, very wrong. I mean, he really pursued me, and I was like so in a victim place. And he actually mentioned these words. He said, "You're a victim. You're playing the victim." And back in the course in Greece, it was so very interesting that the method of the theater is that there is a situation, and one is a victim, the other is the aggressor, and people from the public, they suggest solutions, and when they suggest solutions, they step in the shoes of the victim, and they see that maybe their solution is not working or it's going places, and you discover things. And when I suggested a solution, it was a victim, I don't know, a girl. She was supposed to be bullied sexually, a bit sexually, in a bus in London. And when I entered the victim's shoes, I mean, I triggered in that person, which was a really nice guy before. He said to me, "Look, I never felt, I mean, he was really mad. He was like another person. He said, you triggered in me such an aggression, such a powerful aggression. I mean, he threw me off from the chair on the floor. He really became like an aggressive person. And my solution was to go towards the aggressor and be very nice with the aggressor, be very kind. And actually, that is what I kind of did the whole time. I mean, I was the good girl in school, but still had the image of the person you had to burn on the fire. And he was like very, very, very aggressive, but in a very, very, I mean, in a line that he would still be very legal, he would cover this aggression. But he was like aggressive in tone and in words and in subtleties and things like this. He would always, I mean, the second word was, in case of a trial, I don't know, I would win. So he would be very, very aggressive.
Theodora, the whole time you were talking, I was thinking, fifth house, this thing about theater you spoke, your natal Pluto-Saturn conjunction now being triggered from the seventh house by the same planets. This whole thing may have opened up confrontation with others, kind of Pluto and Saturn now being other people because they travel to your seventh house. You have a natal Mars on the DC, and you know we can probably make some associations here. I don't know, just throwing this out of meeting passive aggression probably as well, not just direct in other people or seeing it in other people. But I suggest, this is also interesting, and you obviously can illustrate your chart with experiences that can make it alive for us, and that's we can continue. Hopefully, I invite you all to join me again next week because it's now almost 9. I don't want to go. We can speak until all evening, but I guess we have to stop now. So shall we choose the topic for next week? You tell me what you're interested in, and we can just schedule another call.
Will you do it at the same time next week?
Yes.
Same time?
We tend to stick to the same day, same time, but we always decide at the end what we're talking about next time. So you can vote.
Well, the fact that there was that 6-12 house axis that was so common, I mean, obviously I'm fascinated by that. So I would do my best to be able to make it again next week.
I think this would be, if we choose this topic, this can be a continuation of what we're speaking about today, as I feel like we didn't have enough time to go through maybe other charts as well and other cases and other people to comment. It's so much, but we can kind of take from today and continue, as a lot of us have things going on in this axis. Yeah, I see a lot of notes, so shall we agree on this?
Yes, please.
Okay, now we started with the archetypes, we started with all the signs of the zodiac with the relevant planets, and then we switched to Chiron to kind of, a little bit change gear. Now we're switching to the houses, but we don't need to go in any order. So let's do this axis now. Later on, we can do another axis. We can do another pair of houses. But yeah, let's start with this one next week.
Okay,
thank you so much.
I will send you all this time an email with the link to where you can watch this, where you can watch the recording and the previous recordings if you're interested. It's in the same place. And I'll also send you this time the breakdown of the chat window, because there were so many things that people want to hear and so on, so you may want to come back to that. Okay, well, thank you so much. And if you want to have any final comments or anybody wants to say something, go ahead.
Thank you
I just want to say something. This was for Xavier. I'm also 12th house, Sun, Mercury, Venus. So I get communication issues, but I've never seen anyone else with the 12th house Sun, Mercury, Venus. And before I saw the chart, I was extremely engaged and energized by how you were expressing yourself. So
Thank you.
it was surprising for me to hear your comment about communication.
And you both Aries. You both have the suns in Aries. Yeah. Lots of other things in common.
Thank you.
Know out his chart better, but yeah.
There's all that noise again. I don't know that.
Yeah, it started again, but never mind.
It doesn't matter at all.
Yes, no problem. Okay, well,
bye-bye.
Bye-bye. See you next week.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.